The screen of the phone cut through the darkness, a sharp rectangle of light against the unlit room. Alex sat at the desk, his thumb suspended a fraction of an inch above the send icon. He had typed the message 3 times already. He read it again. Each word looked fragile, exposed. His heart hammered against his ribs, a steady, insistent rhythm that filled the silence. He closed his eyes and saw the recipient reading it. Saw the dismissive roll of the eyes, the sharp tap of the delete key without a single reply. The visualization was vivid, painful, and entirely internal. His skin felt tight. He pulled his hand back, as if the screen were burning him, and flipped the phone face down on the wood surface. The room returned to its heavy, stifling quiet. He stared at the ceiling, replaying the silence he had just invented. Then, he reached out again. His fingers moved with mechanical precision. He deleted the message, character by character, until the screen was empty. He exhaled, a long, ragged sound. The tension in his chest loosened, leaving behind a hollow, temporary peace. He had avoided the disaster, yet his pulse remained elevated, as if he had just narrowly escaped a physical blow. The next morning, the office hallway stretched out, a long, sterile corridor of fluorescent hum and polished linoleum. Alex kept his eyes fixed on the tiles ahead, his pace rhythmic and measured. As he neared the conference room door, the simulation began. He saw himself walking in. He felt the weight of every gaze in the room. He imagined stumbling over his opening words, the sudden, sharp silence that would follow, and the muffled whispers of colleagues turning toward each other. His internal theater was relentless. Heat prickled at his neck, and his lungs tightened, demanding more air than the office vents provided. His hands began to sweat. He reached the water cooler and gripped the hard plastic rim, knuckles white, forcing his weight onto his heels. He stood there for a full minute, eyes closed, listening to the drip of water. His heart hammered a frantic, uneven tempo against his ribs. He counted his breaths, forcing them to lengthen, forcing his pulse to slow. The meeting had not even begun, yet he felt as if he had already failed. He released the cooler, smoothed his palms, and stepped toward the conference room. He pushed the door open and claimed the seat at the very end of the table, far from the center of the room. Later that night, the library offered a different kind of silence. It was cool, smelling of dust and dried paper. Alex sat at a heavy wooden table, an open volume resting beneath his hands. He read the same paragraph 3 times. The text described how the human brain failed to distinguish between a genuine threat and a mental rehearsal. It explained the amygdala, an ancient component of the mind that processed imagination as if it were a physical predator stalking through the grass. His pulse quickened as he read the mechanism. His body was flooding with cortisol, preparing for a fight that existed only in his head. This was a survival system, refined over millennia, now misfiring in a world that no longer required such sharp vigilance. He was not weak. He was simply reacting to a false signal. He stared at the pages, the letters blurring as the logic took hold. His mind was a machine designed to anticipate danger, but it was currently hunting ghosts in a vacuum. Alex closed the book, the sound sharp and final in the quiet room. He stood up, his movements deliberate. He had been fighting a war against his own biology, and for the first time, he recognized the enemy. The next day, Alex stood before the glass entrance of a neighborhood cafe. Inside, people sat in clusters, their voices rising and falling in a steady, rhythmic hum. He stared at the threshold, and his mind immediately triggered the familiar simulation. He saw himself walking through the door. He saw the patrons looking up, eyes hardening, faces turning away. He felt the phantom sting of isolation. Every muscle in his legs locked, urging him to turn around and walk back into the safety of the street. He paused, his hand inches from the cold metal handle. He chose to interrupt the loop. He took a long, sharp breath, forcing his mind to project a different outcome. He imagined the simple, mundane act of walking forward. He imagined greeting the barista without stumbling. He gripped the door handle. The metal was cool and heavy under his palm. He pushed. The door swung inward with a faint, smooth click of resistance. He stepped over the threshold, his eyes fixed on the interior, ready to confront the reality he had spent a lifetime avoiding. His heartbeat was rapid, but he did not retreat. He walked into the space, the air inside warmer, filled with the sharp scent of roasted beans and the indifferent chatter of the morning crowd. The cafe was loud, cluttered, and entirely indifferent to his existence. Nobody stared. No one whispered. The barista merely looked up, tapped the register, and asked for his order. Alex spoke, his voice steady, and paid for his coffee. He carried the cup to a small table near the window and sat down. He watched the steam rise, curling into the air. The tragedy he had rehearsed for years simply did not exist. The world was moving forward, unbothered by his presence or his absence. He looked at his hands, realizing the invisible walls he had been navigating were nothing more than echoes of his own fear. He had spent his life living in a prison built by his own mind, terrified of outcomes that never manifested. The realization settled in, heavy and liberating. He pushed his chair back. The legs scraped against the floor, a sharp, real sound. He stood up, left the unfinished coffee on the table, and walked back out through the door. Outside, the street was crowded and noisy. He took a breath of the sharp morning air. He did not look for a catastrophe. He did not prepare for a failure. He stopped rehearsing the end, and finally, for the first time, began to live the beginning.